because not every day is going to be those shiny little moments that you're going to see. Some days are going to be harder, but we don't sit in the problem. We sit in the solutions. You know, there's such a sense sometimes of desperation in our hearts, or desperation that we need to be somewhere, or we need to be doing something more, or we need to. It's about sitting back, and it's about relaxing and just saying, yes, there is a clock ticking, but it didn't say it had an alarm that was going to go off. It just means time is moving forward, and I want to move forward with the time of when I should be a certain person. And it's about owning that whole journey. And we work through More Than Existing in the way of building an empire. It's about blueprinting out the life that you really want to live. So when I had to do this, I actually went to the writing that I'm using for my deck of cards. And so I want to read part of this to you. And it was like, from the shadows. And understanding what it means to be in the shadows. When an energy of someone else has shadowed our light. So whether it is somebody who is good, whether it's somebody who's not so great, people shadow our lives. So they leave their little mark upon us. They leave that energy upon us. So even some of the people who have tried to protect us, keep us sheltered from the world, are also shadowing us, because if they were trying to overprotect us, they were afraid to let us be out in the world. So we were shadowed. We never got to be ourselves. Or if there's someone who kind of hurt or harmed us in any way, it's the same thing. They come over our light, and we believe that our light has been dulled, or our light has been taken, or we keep getting pushed back, saying, oh, you don't want to go that direction, because if you go that direction, someone might hurt you. If you go that direction, something bad could happen. All of these things that take place. And it's like, no, the essence of everything who we are is in the light. So everything that we teach, everything that we do, everything that we project forward is about knowing that our light has never been taken away from us. And even those that we love that are on the other side, their light is not gone. Their light is there as well. Their light hasn't left. So More Than Existing started with a statement for me. It started with the statement, I am done. I was sitting in the basement in an office I used to have in the basement. Now my office is on the top floor, and you'll understand all of that as you go through the process. And I was sitting in the basement office, and I had a huge office. It looked so pretty. It looked so nice. And I moved down there, and I moved into this space, and the essence of how much more came from that and how much more comes from that story is really truly about everything in our lives starts in the foundations. It starts in the basement. You got to start on the bottom floor. Got to go back and look at what's not working, where the cracks are, what has taken us to where we are, what has taken our strength, our light, our energy, anything away from us, or what keeps us from believing that we're not worthy to be on the top floor. So I'm going to read this a little bit. I had no idea where this journey would take me at the time. But here I am, right back at the beginning of my work, as I have been called to bring More Than Existing to life again. It was not completed, and it was to be so much more than a few workshops and a half-written book. Spirit was not going to let my shadow self stop me from living and speaking my truest of self. The aging truth of more than existing has evolved and grown a life of its own, and will continue for many years to come, as we are living in a time of finally coming out of the shadows of guilt, shame, all that ego creates from the conditioning of the fearful egos of many who walk before us. From a desire to be enough or to be seen, we live in the shadows of ourselves. The shadow is an illusion of the continued stories of the life we have told ourselves, that we have told, that control us and keep us a part of the identity that's not truly us. So part of this journey is going to really be about getting clear of what your identity is. Who are you? What have you been conditioned to believe? And I like I always say, I work in the belief that you need a good team. You need a support system. You need a great family doctor. You need if you're working, you need a great psychologist. You need a great life coach. You need all these great things that help you in whatever way you can. And sometimes your friends can be your own worst enemies, because your friends will talk you out of rising above where they are. Because if you start to, and not saying they're bad people, they're great people. Great friends are great to have. But when you start to look at the list of friends, or you start to look at where people are, you're sometimes looking at yourself as staying on levels together. You want to bring yourself up here and then invite people to come up to where you are, not keep coming back down. So part of your growth and part of your is really getting clear on your identity, what your values are, what's going to be important to you. So when I start looking through and asking this is, what was your dream? When you were thinking of your dream life, think back to being a child. When you were thinking back to life, what was the dream life you really wanted to live? And how much of that dream life are you living right now? And so if we can see nothing, we want to go back. We don't want to keep trying to push you forward without getting some clarity on what needs to be fixed here. Because if we rise you all the way up here and you grow all the way to here instantly, and we get you in a peak and say, oh, I feel great, but nothing down here has been put together in knowing who you are and the essence of you, this will crumble again. Our whole goal is to keep you from crumbling again, to keep you from losing yourself again. So when we start to set an intention, one very important thing to do right from the get-go of this class is to set an intention. This is where you start. Start with setting that intention of what do you want to build in your life? Because you can't have back the past. The past is now gone, right? The past is not here. And no matter what it was, and even if it was the best past in the world, it's still gone. So even if yesterday was the best day in my life, it's not here today. Today is a new day. So what is here today? What do we have today? And that's the way we look at every single day. What do I have today? What is your win of the day? Because every time you look at a win that you've accomplished something, you know you've done one thing good for yourself today. And this is about finding the little wins. It's not about a big win. It's not about living the big dream. So we take the big dream. We take the big empire. And we can't build a big empire without fixing the bottom. And I've built an empire. I've built several empires. I owned a huge salon and spa. I had 17, 18 employees. I have done all of that. And then I lost myself into a severe depression. And I found myself, and I had built several empires. Built one in Newfoundland. I built one in Alberta. It was like I had all this stuff, but I couldn't maintain it because no one taught me the in-between stuff. I was so conditioned. And then my grief, when I had to go through my grief, it got pushed underneath the rug. And because I just had to keep going. You just have to keep going. You just put the face on for the world. What if you need to be angry? What if you need to be, it's not about always putting on a face and it's like, suck it up, buttercup. It's not that. It is about sometimes letting the shit out, letting it go. And that includes being able to write. If you can't speak it, write it. Write it out, because this is your time. And I'm a believer in God consciousness, whatever God means for you, totally. We don't have any set here. We work on archetypes and everything else. And so it's like, if God didn't have a plan, it wouldn't be happening. So before we even go in, we get the opportunity to start right from here. If you look at dreaming big, it is the most brilliant thing in the world. But is it always achievable? Or if you look at trying to make everyone else happy, is it achievable? No. What is achievable? What can we do? Break it down. So what is the one small thing that you would like to accomplish in your life right now? It could be your health. It could be the lifestyle. It could be anything that's taking place. It doesn't mean that every bit of the problems are going to be gone. So the big dream can be something that is not fully achievable right now, but we're going to break it down and we're going to look at all the little things. What is achievable? What are the simple things that I can start to do? And if you're looking for, I always get everyone come in, I'm looking for a purpose. I can't find my purpose. Well, your purpose is to live. What is your greater purpose? What is your greatest desire? To sparkle, to shine, to not be afraid to live. And so this is waiting for you. It's not going to leave you. The big dream, the happiness, the journey is not going to, you're never going to be left behind. And And when I say that God consciousness has a plan, is that no matter what else you have done, it's like, oh, God's forgotten me now because I've done this wrong or I've done that wrong. No, nobody has ever forgotten you. It is still waiting right here for you. It's like that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And it is real. How we get there, and someone says, you know, are you living your dream life? Abso-freaking-lutely, I'm living my dream life. Is it the absolute biggest dream yet? No, because it keeps freaking growing. Does it have issues and problems like everyone else? Yes, because you're still always going to be human. The difference is I hide nothing. I am what I am. I am who I am. I have the same, but I don't live in the struggles. I don't live in the problems. I keep rising myself up to a solution because there's always a solution. Anything that's down here, you don't want to keep going back down to find it.
Right.
And on that journey and in that journey, you find yourself having to leave behind things that weren't suiting you, things that weren't really working with you no more, because you're learning to fall in love with you. And the whole key to your heart and the whole essence of I am golden, which is the whole process of what I do. And I'm giving you the first key to open up your heart so that you can put the work and journey and work into your journey, the work into saying that I am worthy, that my heart is worth it. I'm worth it. What I have to say is worth hearing. What I want to do is worth it. And I don't care if somebody else laughs at me. I don't care if somebody else makes fun of me. I don't care if somebody else judges me. I'm about to live. It's when you can finally look in the mirror and see that person who's always been standing there that you think is gone or that you have never seen. When you can look at her and say, oh my God, you are beautiful, wonderful. In a lot of other people, and you have no problem telling somebody else how great and wonderful they are. But when you're telling somebody else that you're seeing in them, that's also what you're seeing in yourself. But you're not able to fully see it yet because the shadow essence is still in ownership. Who places us where we are is our own self. But what puts us where we are is our own selves. And sometimes we get so caught up in our own personal issues because they become so big inside of us that we're not able to see anymore anything else but that big issues that are inside of us, which ultimately takes us into a lower vibrating energy. And you find yourself only talking about that, only being with people like that, right? So once you start to recognize, okay, no one else is going to make my life better but me. Nobody. No one brings me happiness but me. Nobody's going to bring me everything that I need in this world but me. No one ever owned you, and no one's ever going to own you. You have full ownership of yourself. And a lot of the things that happen, and once I talk back about my life and I think of, you know, oh, I had this ex, and I used to write this way. I say, oh, my brother did this to me, and my mother did this to me, and my ex-boyfriend did this to me. And I'm thinking, because I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't believe I was worthy enough. Now, did it stem from ancestral story? Yes, of course. But there was a point where you get to gain back all of who you are. Everything that when we take the ownership, it's like, no one else is going to treat me that way. No one else is going to take away my dreams. No one else is, I'm going to start taking this in. And that's where this program really starts, is that you start to take ownership of recognizing that I have been conditioned to live this way, to live in this fear, to be this way, and to accept the bad behaviors of others as something that should be okay to lay on me. And it is not okay. What's holding you back from living your truest of life? Doesn't mean that everything has to be perfectly in place and we have all that. What holds you back? We think it's us because our identity has been created by somebody else. Right down to the simple fact that somebody else gave us our freaking names. Right? Somebody told us what we should believe in. Somebody told us what religion we should be. Someone told us to be fearful of God or not be fearful of God, or to be, you know, somebody has given us all of this. You're a girl. So if you're a girl, then this is what's expected of you. If you're a boy, then this is what's expected of you. This is your name. I had a very strong personality from an early age. And as much as I've allowed, you know, some people to walk over me, but I knew the essence of who I was at an early age. There was the things of me that were a non-negotiable that I wasn't willing to give up. And one of them was my name. I love the name Corrie, but I didn't want to be called a boy. Turns out it makes a great logo, and it's part of my identity of who I am. And now I know exactly who Corrie is. But it's that whole, when it was an issue, it was me screaming out because no one seen me. Nobody knew who I was. People would create that identity. Oh, she's this, she's shy, or she's a tomboy. She's this, she's that, she's overweight. So I was just doing a writing, and I was writing out, it's the beginning of the actual More Than Existing book now. It's the intro. And I talked about looking in the mirror and seeing myself for the first time, to really see myself. When you know you, everything that everyone else has pointed out as a flaw in you is probably some of your best qualities. Because the reason why they were always picking them out as flaws of you is that was the mirror image of what was reflecting back at them. So everything they were picking at you about is what they actually felt about themselves. My mother always picked on my weight. I was in Slim Down, a weight loss program, at 11 years old with a bunch of women around a chair. And I look back and I see pictures. I was not overweight. I was a tall girl. I was like the towering over girl in kindergarten. When you look at the pictures, all these little tiny kids, and especially little girls, and then there's big tall Corrie right here, leader of the pack, right, walking in the first one because I was the tallest one in class. So it had its benefits, right? You get to be the first one in. And so here I am all the way up here. But my mother was always taught to play small. So she was always taught weight was a big issue because you had to look perfect, because then no one else would see the other flaws that were in life. So when I went to had my surgery done, she was carrying so much guilt that if something happened to me, she would feel responsible. And I said back to her, my decisions have nothing to do with you. This is me taking ownership of my life. I'm overweight because I made a choice to put frickin' food in my lips that I didn't need to. I'm a grown adult. I know better. I'm not going to guilt or shame you for your whole life because you put me in Slim Down at 11 years old. But did it contribute? Of course it did. But now I can look at her life, and I look at her life and think back to this poor little mom who was only in her 20s, never had no parenting, raised half her family, who had been abused, who had been through hell and back, who was so fearful of my life ever representing her life that she was trying to perfect my life out of fear. So she was afraid someone would make fun of me. She was afraid someone would pick on me. It never had anything to do with her ever judging me. And now that I can look at it in that light and I can have that perspective, I no longer carry any anger, resentment, anything that goes with that kind of energy. And the difference is that I recognized that I had this strong personality from the time I was a little girl. I was given to her to teach her to have a stronger personality. I was there to teach her to stand up for herself because I backed down from nothing. Never. I was not backing down. So I taught her all those things. Everything that she tried to condition me to was she didn't know better. She didn't know better. So we only can do the best that we can do with the knowledge and information that we have. As we grow, as we become a bigger part of creating our own lives, we get to know better. We get to do better. So what do we want to pass on to the next generations? We're here to break cycles. We're here to break those things that are happening. And that's what you're doing. You have now made a choice to stand up, taking ownership and saying, I am now taking my life back. I'm now taking me back. I had a dream. The dream changes. The childhood dream I always had was I was going to be on a stage. I thought I was going to be a platform hairdressing artist, blah, blah, blah. I seen I was wearing a pack, and I had this headphone set that there wasn't even invented back then. I didn't know that this day and age, it would not be that exact same dream. But the platform and stage I would stand on would be based on everything that I learned as a child by being put in a Pentecost school and learning a lot about a light inside of you, learning about a Jesus and a Mother Mary and a God and all these things that we archetype our lives after now, of saying you are not here to suffer. You're not here to continue to suffer. You're here because somebody else had suffered, but you're where you are today is that you get to walk in the light and walk beside the best of the best, and never think that you're not worthy to walk beside the best of the best. Because you are the best of the best. If you truly believe that we are all the light of a God consciousness in any form, the creator, no matter what it is, we're all that. We're all worthy of that. It's the beginning of stepping into your light. And so the dream may change into an adult dream, but what you dreamt as a child is still alive inside of you. It's getting tweaked. It's getting to do the little pieces, but it's now about bringing it to life. And all you're being asked to do is set your intention that you know you're worthy. I sat down in that basement that day when I said, I am done. And I wrote a statement that I didn't know would cost me so much, but it has cost me a lot, but I've gained everything. And I wrote, I will seek out and live a life of happiness, joy and happiness. And whatever it costs me to get there, I'm willing to pay. But I will not live in misery anymore. That decision has cost me a lot. Mentally, financially. Would I go back and change a bit? No. Because the joy and happiness that I found inside of me now is endless. And the joy and happiness that I get to exude out when I get to be on stage, or I get to be with a group of women who are all like-minded women who I get to walk next to. And I always say I took the training of lead like Jesus, because I truly believe that when we walk amongst each other and we walk together, we band together stronger. We always have an open end in our circle to invite in more people, and it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. That's the love and light and the joy and happiness that I live inside of me, that I now get to share with everybody else. My cup is not too full that I can't take in more. My cup is, I take the time away. I take the time to step away. I do all the things that I need to do. And this is why we're here, is that you now get to really start to relive from the start. We get to start over. We're doing a redo. We're doing a redo. And when we got to do a redo, it's not always going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. So set an intention, and you can set new intentions. You don't have to stay with that intention, but set an intention that you know that you can maintain. Set that intention and start to remember your dream. As you start to write out these questions and start to answer these questions, remember, you can go back and scratch out and redo anything. I was blessed at 18 years old to have one of the greatest teachers that I could have ever had, and that was in hairdressing school. And it was a male, owned one of the biggest schools in Newfoundland. He was always told he couldn't have it. He had to fight tooth and nail for it. It was a private school. He charged a lot more money than everywhere else. And people say, you're nuts. Nobody will ever come to your school. He was trained in New York. He was from Newfoundland. And he said, I don't believe that. He says, I'm charging because I only want to take those that really want to invest in themselves. And the trade school you could go for, $1,000 or whatever. And this was $10,000. That was a lot of money. All the way back to over 30 years ago, right? And I said to my parents, I'm going to this school. And they're like, I don't know where the money's going to come from. And I said, oh, I didn't ask. I just know I'm going. And I'd never heard of him, but I knew that's where I needed to get. And when I got there and I started, first thing he did was write. He wrote an affirmation on the board. And it was, today you are okay. I graduated. I went on to be one of his number one students, and I went back to visit him 15 years later, and he had a picture of me still on his desk. And he's now on his wife's on my Facebook page, and he sent me a message. He said, I told you what you would be. You didn't believe it. And that I learned from him. He was a life coach. That's what he was. He was a life coach. He had trained in all of that, plus being a hairdresser. And he said, because we learn the most that we learn when we have people in their most vulnerable state. People come in to get their hair changed because they're trying to change the exterior instead of working on the interior. He said they just don't know when they meet people like us, they're getting to work on the interior. So you can keep sweeping underneath the rugs. We can change the exteriors. We can lose weight, get new hair, do all of that stuff. We can put on the best face. Everything will still crumble if we don't fix what the real issue is. If we don't come out and walk in our truest light. Your journey is not leaving without you. There is no alarm clock going to go off and say, oh, you're not going to get there. You will get there. The moment that you made a decision, and the moment, so your lowest moment in life is your most defining moment. The moments that have dropped you to your knees now have become the most defining moment that you have the choice to stand up and use it as like jet fuel is what I call it, because you're in the driver's seat. And you can use it as jet fuel to fuel you forward now. This is the beginning of a journey that you're not going to take alone now, because you're no longer alone.